Installing the Crawford Performance air-oil separator requires removal of the top mount intercooler. In no particular order, we will remove the mounting bolts securing the right side of the intercooler, a breather hose, the intercooler recirculation valve bolts, the throttle body hose clamp, the intercooler hose clamp, connecting the intercooler hose to the turbo, 2 more breather hoses, and the mounting bolt securing the left side of the intercooler. First, remove the engine breather hose on the right side of the black metal crossover pipe. Remove the 2 other engine breather hoses on the left side of the black metal crossover pipe. Remove the 12 mm intercooler recirculation valve bolts using a wrench or socket and move the valve out of the way. Using a flathead screwdriver, loosen the clamp holding the intercooler tube onto the turbo. Loosen the throttle body intercooler hose clamp using the same screwdriver. Using a 12 mm wrench or socket, loosen the mounting bolt securing the right side of the intercooler to the support bracket. Now do the same for the other side. Carefully remove the intercooler by grabbing the ends and slowly twisting back and forth while lifting up. During this process, you should notice that the throttle body intercooler hose slides off the intercooler and the intercooler hose off the turbo. We must make room for the Crawford Performance air-oil separator in the engine bay by relocating the wiring unit and removing the 2 12 mm bolts securing the wiring unit bracket to the inner fender well. Separate the bracket from the wiring by removing the black fastener that secures the wiring to the bracket. We used an angled needle nose pliers with a long neck. Remove the bracket from the wiring unit harness by sliding up the bracket tab with your thumb and separating the bracket from the harness by sliding down. Undo the zip tie securing the wiring to the left side intercooler bracket. Unlock the wiring harness by depressing the tab with your thumb and sliding the lever to the opposite side. Separate the 2 harness ends. Take the harness with the locking mechanism and slide it under the aluminum AC line and the AC line support bracket. Make sure the lever on the harness is in the unlocked position and reconnect the 2 parts of the wiring harness. Now return the lever to the locked position. Relocate the smaller wire that is secured to the upper rubber AC hose by removing the clip from the rubber hose and disconnecting the smaller wire at the connector. Reroute the wire under the AC line and AC line support bracket. Move the large wiring harness down as far as it can go in the engine bay and slide it forward to just in front of the steel lines located on the side wall of the engine bay. To keep them from sliding around, secure both the small wire and large wiring harness to the steel lines, or some other preferred location, using one of the supplied zip ties. With the wiring relocated, we can begin the next step of the installation. Disconnect the rubber hose from the PCV valve located underneath the throttle body by using a pair of angled needle nose pliers with a long neck to remove the clamp. For reference, the clamp is located behind the hoses and wires in the direction of the arrow. It may also be helpful to identify the crankcase breather connection at the opposite end of the hose for reference. Because it's a tight space, you may need to feel around to identify the clamp and slide the pliers over the clamp. While pinching the clamp with the pliers, gently pull on the hose to slide it off the PCV valve. This should now expose the PCV valve, and we have marked the turbo for reference. Carefully slide the supplied rubber cap over the PCV valve, using your pliers and slide the clamp back over the rubber cap to seal it from the elements. Locate the electronic check valve, which is on the passenger side, just beside the throttle body. Disconnect it from the electronic plug. Using two hands, gently slide the entire Y assembly off the crankcase breather and remove it. Remove the electronic check valve from the rest of the assembly. Install the rubber cap over the end of the white electronic check valve and secure it using a supplied zip tie. Plug the white electronic check valve back into its electronic connector. This is not shown. Separate the shorty rubber crankcase breather hose from the Y assembly by sliding it off or loosening the connector. Insert the supplied plastic Y connector into the rubber crankcase breather hose. Now reinstall the shorty rubber crankcase breather hose on the crankcase breather. Take the Crawford air oil separator and secure it to the inner engine wall near the passenger side strut using the bolts that secured the bracket for the wiring harness. Take the longest tube supplied in the air oil separator kit, which we've labeled 1 in our diagram, and slide one end over the angled fitting on the plastic Y that we fit into the shorty crankcase breather hose. Now take the tube that we've labeled number 2 in our diagram and slide one end over the top of the plastic Y that we fit into the crankcase breather hose. Make sure to secure these hoses to the plastic fitting using the supplied zip ties. Route the longest hose around the steel AC line, slide it onto the lowest fitting on the air oil separator, and secure it with a supplied zip tie. Using another zip tie, secure the hose to the pitch stop to keep it from moving around. This is not shown in the video. Take tube number 2 and slide it on the second to lowest fitting on the Crawford air oil separator. Secure it using one of the supplied zip ties. Locate the OEM engine breather return hose that connects to the turbo inlet hose and slide it out of the plastic clip and off the turbo inlet hose fitting. Take the tube which we've labeled number 3 in our diagram and slide it over the turbo inlet hose fitting. Make sure this tube also slides underneath the turbo water line and insert it into the plastic clip. Slide this tube onto the top fitting of the air oil separator and secure it with a supplied zip tie. Reinstall the intercooler and take the supplied tube in the Crawford air oil separator kit, which is labeled 4 in our diagram, and slide it over the remaining crossover pipe attached to the intercooler. Slide the opposite end of the tube over the remaining fitting on the air oil separator and secure it with a supplied zip tie. Now your installation is complete and you can rest easy knowing that your engine oil will stay in the engine and not recirculate through the intake.